Have you ever felt that, no matter how hard you work, the horizon of financial freedom seems to move further away? It is a strange paradox of our modern life that as our technology advances, our collective burden of debt only seems to grow heavier. We are told that debt is a tool, a ladder, to reach our dreams. But history whispers a much more complex truth to those willing to listen. My grandfather used to say that a man who owes nothing is the only one who truly owns his time. Today, we live in a world where the very air we breathe is thick with the mathematics of interest in the shadows of central banking. This is not just a story about numbers on a screen. It is a story about how our world was designed to keep us running. Let us take a walk back to a time when money was something you could hold in your hand and feel the weight of. For centuries, gold and silver were the anchors of human trust because they were difficult to find and impossible to forge. But as empires grew, so did the need for a more flexible way to fund wars and grand ambitions. The birth of the modern debt system began not in a laboratory, but in the smoky backrooms of 17th century London. The year was 1694, and the kingdom was in desperate need of silver to fight a war that it could not afford to lose. This was the moment the Bank of England was born, and with it, the blueprint for our current reality. Imagine a group of wealthy merchants coming together to lend the government money that the government didn't actually have. In exchange, they were given the right to issue paper notes, a promise that these pieces of paper could be traded for gold. It felt like magic at the time, a way to create liquidity out of thin air to support the crown. There is a proverb that says, "A borrowed garment never keeps you warm," and the world was about to learn why. This system turned the government into a permanent debtor and the bankers into the ultimate architects of the future. We call it sovereign debt today, but back then, it was simply a survival tactic that became a habit. This shift changed the very nature of what we consider value. Money stopped being a physical asset and started becoming a social contract based on the promise of future labor. When you take out a loan today, you are essentially selling a piece of your future time to pay for your present desires. The architects of this system understood something profound. People will work harder for a dream they haven't reached than for a reality they already possess. They designed a system where the supply of money is tied to the creation of debt, meaning if all debts were paid, money would vanish. It is a loop that requires constant motion to stay upright, much like a bicycle that falls the moment you stop pedaling. Context is everything when we look at the global stage. These early banks weren't just local institutions. They were the engines of colonialism and industrial expansion. They provided the capital to build ships, fund factories, and bridge continents, but always with a price tag attached. The interest on these loans meant that more had to be paid back than was originally given, creating a permanent gap. This gap is the infinite trap, a requirement for constant growth to pay for the ghost money of interest. It shaped international relations, turning some nations into lenders and others into perpetual servants of the balance sheet. As a man who has lived through many cycles, I see the emotional toll this takes on the human spirit. We are raised to believe that being in debt is a personal failure, yet we live in an economy that would collapse without it. This creates a deep sense of anxiety, a feeling that we are always behind even when we are moving forward. The architects knew that a person in debt is a person who is easier to predict and easier to manage. When your next meal depends on meeting a payment, you are less likely to challenge the status of the world. It is a subtle form of control that doesn't require walls or bars, only a ledger. The transition from gold-backed currency to pure fiat money in the 20th century was the final brick in this monument. When the world moved away from the gold standard, the constraints on how much debt could be created simply evaporated. Money became an idea, backed only by the full faith and credit of governments that were already drowning in red tape. To understand our world today, you must realize that we are living in the largest financial experiment in human history. We are testing how much weight a bridge made of promises can hold before the wood begins to splinter. If the first part of our story was about the birth of the system, the second part is about how it breathes. We often speak of inflation as a natural weather pattern, something that just happens like rain or wind. But from a historical perspective, inflation is often a deliberate choice, a way to erode the value of debt at the expense of the saver. My father always told me to save for a rainy day, but the system is designed to make those savings worth less over time. This is the invisible tax, a way of redistributing wealth without ever having to pass a law or sign a decree. It is a theft of time from those who work and a gift to those who hold the assets. The global financial system operates on a hierarchy of creditworthiness that mirrors the class structures of old. Nations in the global south often find themselves trapped in cycles of borrowing to pay off the interest on previous loans. They are forced to cut spending on health and education to satisfy the requirements of international lenders. This isn't just economics, it is a moral crisis that has been normalized by the language of fiscal responsibility. When a mother in a developing nation can't get medicine because her country is paying back a debt from 40 years ago, the trap is visible. The architects designed the exits to be very narrow and the entrances to be wide and welcoming. In our own lives, this manifests as the lifestyle creep fueled by easy credit. We are bombarded with messages that we deserve the best right now, and that we can pay later. But later always arrives with a guest named interest, and he has a very large appetite. The psychological weight of this is immense. It prevents us from taking risks, from starting that small business, or from speaking our truth at work. Debt makes us quiet. It makes us compliant. It turns the bold adventurer into a cautious clerk because the stakes of failure have been artificially inflated by the system. We must also look at the role of central banks in this grand play. These institutions have the power to move markets with a single word, yet they are often shielded from the public eye. Te manache, te infinite trap. By adjusting interest rates, trying to find the perfect balance between growth and collapse. But who are they balancing it for? Often, the liquidity they provide stays at the top of the pyramid, inflating the price of houses and stocks while wages stay flat. This creates a world where you don't get rich by working. You get rich by owning things that the system is designed to protect. The framework of international relations today is essentially a series of debt negotiations. When one country helps another, it is rarely out of the goodness of their heart. It is often a strategic loan to ensure future cooperation. We see this in grand infrastructure projects that cross borders, where the fine print often includes the rights to natural resources. It is a modern form of the Company of Scotland story we discussed before, but played out on a much larger map. The infinite debt trap is the ultimate tool of soft power, allowing empires to be built without firing a single shot. There is a proverb that says, "He who digs a pit for others will fall into it himself." The architects of this system believe they are in control, but even they are subject to the laws of mathematics. You cannot have infinite growth on a finite planet, and you cannot have infinite debt in a world of limited time. The stress on the system is showing in the form of social unrest and a growing distrust of institutions. People are beginning to sense that the game is rigged, even if they don't quite understand the rules. They feel the weight of the unseen chain, and they're starting to look for the key. The tragedy of this design is that it devalues the human element of trade. In the old days, trade was about a handshake and a fair exchange of value. Now, it is about high-frequency algorithms and derivative contracts that even the experts struggle to explain. We have replaced the human with a spreadsheet, losing the emotional intelligence that should guide our resources. When we treat people as debt units rather than neighbors, we lose the glue that holds a society together. The architects forgot that a house built only on calculations will always be cold, no matter how grand it looks from the outside. As we look at the ruins of past financial crashes, we see a recurring theme. People eventually wake up. We are currently in a moment of great awakening, where the old ways of thinking about money are being challenged. From decentralized finance to a return to local living, people are seeking ways to step outside the infinite trap. But breaking the spell requires more than just a new type of currency. It requires a new way of thinking about what it means to be successful. We must move from the pursuit of more to the pursuit of enough, a concept that is radical in an economy built on perpetual hunger. True wealth is the ability to say no to things that compromise your values. This is why the first step to breaking the trap is to reclaim your own balance sheet. My advice to the younger generation is always the same. Live below your means so that you can live above your fears. Every dollar of debt you pay off is a minute of your life you have bought back from the system. It is a slow process, a quiet rebellion against a world that wants you to be a perpetual consumer. But in that slowness, there is a profound peace that the architects of the infinite debt trap can never understand or take away. We also need to look at our international relations with a more empathetic lens. A world where nations are constantly trying to debt trap one another is a world that is always on the edge of conflict. We must advocate for systems that prioritize human flourishing over interest payments. There have been moments in history, like the Jubilee years of ancient cultures, where debts were periodically forgiven to prevent the total collapse of the social order. Perhaps We are approaching a time where we need a modern version of that, a global reset that acknowledges the current path is unsustainable. It takes courage to look at the world as it is and still remain hopeful. The global financial system is a massive, complex machine, but it was built by human hands, and it can be changed by human hearts. We are not just victims of history, we are the authors of the next chapter. By educating ourselves and sharing these stories, we take away the power of the unseen. When we understand how the trap works, we are less likely to step into it. We can start to build parallel systems based on mutual aid, real value, and the kind of trust that doesn't need a central bank to verify it. The lesson we must learn today is that balance is the only true security. A nation that balances its books is a nation that can stand tall. A family that balances its needs is a family that can sleep soundly. The architects of the infinite debt trap wanted to eliminate balance in favor of a permanent tilt toward their own interests. But gravity always wins in the end. Whether it takes 10 years or 100, the scales will eventually level out. Our job is to be on the right side of that leveling, holding on to the things that truly matter: our relationships, our health, and our integrity. As I look out at the world today, I see a lot of fear, but I also see a lot of fire. People are tired of the invisible chain. They are starting to ask why their hard work isn't enough, and they are finding the answers in the history we have discussed. The infinite debt trap only works as long as we believe there is no other way. The moment we realize that money is a tool we created and not a god we must serve, the trap begins to rust. We can choose to value time over trinkets and community over credit. That is the ultimate lesson learned from the architects of old. So, as you go about your day, I want you to remember that your value is not defined by your credit score. You are a soul with a history, a heart with a purpose, and a mind that can think for itself. Do not let the mathematics of the modern world diminish the magic of your existence. Tie your camel, yes, but do not forget to look at the star. The world may be a complex web of debts and promises, but the most important promise is the one you make to yourself. To live a life of meaning, regardless of the numbers in the ledger. Take a deep breath and know that you are not alone in this struggle. We are all navigating this map together, learning from the shadows of the past to find the light of the future. The infinite trap is only as big as we allow it to be in our minds. Once you see it for what it is, you can start to walk around it. Be kind to yourself, be wise with your resources, and never lose your sense of wonder. The road to freedom is long, but every step you take in truth is a step toward home.